What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
After experimenting with the longitudinal arrangement of the powertrain in the B6 generation, the VW Passat returned to the format with a transversely arranged engine, as it was on the highly successful B3, B4 generations. Unlike its predecessor, which shared a platform with the longitudinally engined Audi, the B6 is closer in design to the VW Golf, and its PQ46 platform is a stretched and more advanced version of the Golf's PQ35. As a consequence, the ratio of dimensions, interior volume and weight has improved, and the cars of PQ35, PQ46 families are very much unified with each other on the chassis, power units and onboard electronics. The body is all steel, but with an abundance of plastic attachments and plastic front panel. Of course, it is available in two variants, as a sedan and as a station wagon. The arrangement of units is row and line. The basic drive is front, but full drive is also possible through an angular gearbox and a Haldex clutch on the rear axle. Suspensions are typical, in the front McPherson, in the rear multi-lever rather simple design. Among the interesting features is the use of electric rack with the location of EPS directly on it and electric drive of parking brake. Now these are typical solutions, but in 2005 they were a breakthrough. Under the hood there is a surprisingly rich choice of motors and simple 8-valve atmospheric 4 with distributed and direct injection, and turbo engines and powerful VR6, and, of course, diesels, both with pump jets and with common rail. As automatic transmissions are used, not only classical 6-speed boxes Aisin of TF60 SC series, but also reselective automatic transmissions. DSG, 6-speed DQ250 and 7-speed DQ200 are standard here. Timeline: March 11, 2005. The beginning of sales of cars with a sedan body and immediately with a wide choice of engines. Gasoline, 1.68V at 102 horsepower, 1.6 FSI 16V at 115 horsepower, 2.0 FSI at 150 horsepower, 2.0 TSI at 200 horsepower, diesel 1.9 TDI 8V at 105 horsepower, 2.0 TDI 8V at 136 horsepower, and 2.0 TDI 16V at 122-170 HP with pump jets. Motors are equipped with 5 or 6-speed automatic transmission or 6-speed automatic transmission. August 19, 2005. Start of sales of cars with station wagon body. March 2006. Launch of version with VR6 3.2 engine with 250 horsepower. December 2006. Appearance of version with VR6 3.6 engine with 280-299 HP, DSG DQ250 and 4Motion all-wheel drive. October 2007. Appearance of 1.4 TSI engine from EA111 range with output of 122 horsepower. It can be equipped with both 6-speed MKP and 7-speed DSG DQ200. November 2007. Appearance of EA888 Series 1.8 TSI engine with 160 horsepower, also with 6-speed automatic transmission or 7-speed DSG DQ200 in the lineup January 2008. Replacement of the EA113 Series 2.0 TSI engine with the new EA888 Series 2.0 TSI engine with the same power output. In some markets these cars are available with DSG DQ250 gearbox. March 2008. Appearance of the first 2.0 TDI diesel with common rail EA189 in 140-170 HP versions. November 2008. Appearance of new diesel engine 2.0 TDI EA188 with 110 horsepower. Upgrade of gasoline engines 1.8 and 2.0 EA888 to Gen 2. Thus, the 1.8 motor received a 152 horsepower variant. August 2009. Appearance of 1.6 TDI diesel engine with 105 horsepower, July 2010. End of European production in Emden. June 2011. End of B6 production in China under the name VW Magetan. Bodywork. Exterior panels. The 6th Passat is exactly the case when the body metal is good and galvanized, painted well too, but the result is not guaranteed at all. In a relatively dry climate, the car has a chance for excellent preservation. The paintwork is not scratched very much, it is elastic enough and at the same time thick, when necessary covered with a factory layer of anti-gravel. But the whole question is the combination of protection factors. It is not so difficult to find a car with visible rot outside. It will be in most of the cars from Moscow and St. Petersburg, and in many northern cars. We will not go into details what the problem is, but a couple of nuances can be clarified. The zinc layer is not passivated, so at the slightest chipping or on edges where the paintwork is lagging behind, the outer metal begins to oxidize and the oxide film on the surface no longer holds the primer. As a result, the paint can peel off very actively. Any chip grows rather quickly, the paint lifts, and now it is necessary to repaint the whole part. The most dangerous processes occur not on the open surfaces, but under the layer of lagging paintwork. There a bath is formed, in which galvanizing is eaten in a matter of months, and then a cavern in the steel starts to grow, intensively eating out zinc all over the adjacent surface. A similar process occurs in B6 in many dangerous zones, which are described below. Chips on the edge of the hood are usually not terrible, but if the side seam near the hinges rots, it will be very difficult to save the element. On the front edge of the roof, trouble is possible if rust has been started and it has got under the glass molding and longitudinal seams of the upper panel. From the side, inspect the sills first of all. The area of sandblasting at the front wheels is the main supplier of trouble, as the plastic sill cover covers it not entirely. In addition, the layer of anti-gravel lags behind at the bottom, creating opportunities for destruction of the lower part of the sill. And the front fender loses paintwork in its narrow part. Electrochemical corrosion develops at the bottom, at the fender mounting foot, due to accumulation of dirt. The bottoms of the doors also suffer quite badly. On the front doors below the molding there are almost always areas with peeling paintwork. Along the bottom edge there are a lot of chips and rust, and the molding attachment points also swell. The rear side door is a little easier. Here the bottom edge is usually in better condition. With the doors open, inspect the opening seals. Moisture regularly accumulates under the ring molding, and corrosion is not dormant. The seam of the side panel of the body blooms, usually in the lower part, but variants are possible. For example, the loaded place on the windshield pillar and the area near the hinges may suffer. Sometimes rust is visible at the rear, rising from under the plastic sill plate. In theory, this can be eliminated by repainting the openings, but in practice it is very difficult to remove the rust. The edges of the arches rust only on very neglected copies. In the front, the main foci are located on the ears of the locker mounting, quite far from the edge, and it is not difficult to eliminate them in advance. In the rear wheel arch there is almost always rust in the corner, at the junction with the rear bumper, but the edge and the seam are well protected by a layer of sealant. The rear door on station wagons and the trunk lid on sedans do not suffer much. Corrosion along the frame and lower edge is often present, but is only noticeable when the part is repaired. Corrosion in the places where the glass is installed is also visible only if it is cut. The main visible problems on station wagons are rust from the upper edge of the license plate recess and from under the lower saber cover. On sedans, the edge of the beautiful emblem handle suffers, and in the lower part of the paintwork is damaged by ice, and over time it becomes discolored. In addition, it makes sense to inspect the places of installation of mirrors, door edges, recesses of side door handles, side window moldings and antenna mounting point for station wagons, but almost certainly no terrible surprises can be expected from this side. From below, many people buy VW Passat, not particularly bothering to inspect on an elevator if the picture is good from the outside. But this is a bad idea. From underneath, the condition of cars can differ dramatically even when used in the same region and similar conditions. Sometimes you can find through holes in the bottom and sills and serious damage to bearing elements on quite decent-looking cars. Especially if the car is from Moscow and has been repainted on the outside. What should be looked at first of all? Same thing, the sills and their leading edges for peeling paintwork and dirt pockets under the plastic and under the paintwork. The presence of dirt is always a very bad scenario for body integrity. It would be nice to remove the plastic sill in its entirety, which will allow you to normally assess the condition of the plastic too. Metal sill attachment windows, but the operation is complicated and time-consuming. Most likely, you will have to do it after the purchase. At the pre-purchase inspection, you will have to limit yourself to blowing and washing of the gap between the plastic sill and the body. However, the condition of the lower edge of the sill usually shows how damaged it is. Carefully inspect the places of contact between plastic and metal, as bad owners may have neglected damage and even through holes. Inspection from underneath the wheel arches is also important. The condition of the inner edges will tell you whether they have been restored or whether the car has been lucky with its owners and climate. The bottom is especially worth looking at from behind. Unpleasant surface corrosion of almost all surfaces, starting from the gas tank niche and further, is not a verdict. It develops slowly enough and occurs often. But it is difficult to eliminate this kind of damage qualitatively. The work is expensive and with high chances that the rust will soon come out again. If everything looks beautiful, make sure that it is not fresh anti-corrosion, smeared directly on the corrosion. Also look at the exhaust. It's less durable on the B6 than on the B5, and often not native. In the trunk you will be waiting for the traditional inspection of side pockets and search for moisture, especially in station wagons. Under the hood, inspect the overmotor recess for dirt and water accumulations. Here it is not so fraught with troubles as on the previous generations, but there is still plenty of troubles. Jabot is removed only when the wiper blades are removed, and under it opens a niche clogged with debris. By the way, the jabot is fastened with steel clips, which rust and damage the paintwork of the engine shield in the places of contact. There is usually no big accumulation of water in the overmotor niche. In case of clogged drains, it goes straight to the air intake of the cabin ventilation. And there, as luck would have it, either through the drain or on the carpet. Inspecting the floor carpet for moisture is also a must. If the carpets are wet, it will add to the electronics problems, albeit not much, as with the V5, but not as many. Body equipment. The Passat has been valued in part because it represents a reasonable compromise between quality and cost. But, starting from the 6th generation, it demonstrates tendencies to complicate and make small parts more expensive, often with decreasing resource. On the other hand, progress is inexorable. Such problems are typical for almost all manufacturers, and the cost of parts for Passat is kept within reasonable limits. For example, keyless entry system contacts and antenna modules are consumables. At the same time, door handles are much more reliable than on a BMW because VW has a very reliable Hall sensor in the handle and only. The wiring harness breaks, while BMW has a micro switch under an unreliable cover. Adaptive optics AFL with automatic regulation of lighting mode and beam rotation also seriously improves traffic safety and driver's comfort, but it is more expensive, of course. Its resource is limited not only by lens burnout, as in conventional headlights, but also by wear of the positioning mechanism. After 150 to 200,000 mileage, it already requires attention. Lenses in theory are irreplaceable, but in practice they are changed to non-factory ones. The only inconvenience is headlight glass glued on tight. Here the glue softens when the plastic is ready to melt, and you have to take it out with a special tool right on hot. Rear lights with LEDs are repairable in theory, but in practice services do not want to cut old housings and solder diodes. The price of replacement is not shocking, about 6,000 rubles per unit. Sagging doors at mileage over 200, this is the norm. The easiest way to correct it is to install adjustment plates in the hinges. But sometimes the backlash are little pressed by turning the axis of the hinge. There is also a barbaric method. Put a nut in the hinge and forcefully close the door so that it bends a little and rises. Door locks are a traditional sore spot in Passat. Micro switches and motors fail in the lock module at mileage under 200 and age of 10 plus years. They can be repaired, but it is necessary to remove the lock. The cable drive of the external handle gets sour, the cable itself wears out at the bend, and sometimes because of its jamming the door cannot be opened from inside or outside. It can also simply break off in the area of the hook. The handle itself also breaks, the inner bracket cracks. It seems like small troubles, but to get the lock or to change the cables, a whole problem, because the mechanisms of the door are assembled on a separate shield. Not only it is glued on sealant to the door frame, but also the window elevator is attached to it. To remove it, you need to undo the shield with the glass, and this is not always easy. The mounting bolts with reverse threads are regularly torn off, and then they have to be drilled out. Everything is made to torture. The head does not fit on the bolt normally. It is necessary to work in a narrow hole. Tightening force is high. And if the window elevator does not work or is jammed, you will have to drill the rivets of fastening the mechanism to the shield. Or drill out the speakers and cut the cables. Glass drive here is also cable and serves on average 8 to 12 years, further replacement or cable, or the mechanism as a whole. The first is cheaper, the second is more expensive, but not the fact that it is easier and faster. Unless you take the whole thing with the shield. The bumpers are securely fastened, and in general there are no difficulties with them. The guides on the body break over time, but it is not a problem to replace them. If the guides are in good working order, even a broken ear is no problem, as long as there is a sufficient piece to clamp with a washer. Losing grills over time is a plague of all bumper variants except for the beautiful and rare bumper from the F36 version. Here it is more difficult to lose grills, but in case of loss the pain will be much more, because the Chinese analog cannot be bought for a penny. The front panel, as already mentioned, is plastic, so it is better not to move snowdrifts in winter with the bumper, you will break it. Original plastic is not cheap at all, and there is a lot of work. Used will have to pick up on a complete set, and their fastenings of wiring and fans can be different, and the location of a bunch of holes. Chinese variants are designed for some average kits, or local Chinese often require extensive modifications for assembly. The mounts of the main headlights and especially the fog lights are also quite delicate. In general, when buying, check the front end for the quality of the plastic assembly. Chrome elements on B6 in conditions of Moscow do not live long. Already on new cars by 3 years they faded, now the whole side. Lower moldings and chrome of a radiator grille, it is a great merit of the owner who froze on replacement or restoration of details. Well, or simply the car has not seen winter in metropolitan conditions. The gas tank hatch drive is another consumable with a service life of 60 to 100,000. It is better to find out in advance where the emergency opening cable is located. It seems to be a trifle, and it breaks rarely. But the hatch usually fails in winter period, and it can be a surprise for those who have not had cars on the PQ46 platform. Part original price of non-original 2-body front headlight halogen 15651 TYC 10313 Hella 15903 front. Headlight xenon 45727 Valio 39616 Polcar 46847 Windshield 16415 Pilkington 11729 XYG 8591 Front wing 15585 Sat 13589 TYG 5563 Front bumper 35829 Polcar 10602 TYG 6245 Hood 32994 TYG 13869 Blick 3906 Interior. Even decently shabby Passat can be forgiven a lot for its interior. There is surprisingly much space here, and the quality of finishing and selection of materials even in simple complete sets is amazing. And if a set is comparatively expensive, the noble spirit of hardly restrained premiumness reigns. Traditional weak points are the light control knob, block of window elevator buttons and steering wheel buttons. They are rather decently rubbed because of soft touch coating. Sometimes other elements like buttons of locking system, joystick of mirrors, buttons of tape recorder or panel next to the lever of the box also fade. But such cases are few, and usually the problem is not even in the resource, but the use of unsuitable chemistry. Silver coating under anodized aluminum on the center console seems to be not the best solution, but it holds up well, except that it wrinkles a bit, sometimes gets dirty and looks outdated. There are a dozen less common options with different textures, including steel trim, many of them stronger than aluminum. There are also several variants of wood about the same in terms of life, the main problem of which is the loss of glossy shine and damage in the area of the dashboard rings. A very popular variant of kolhozing is installation of interior from B7. The door cards and seats are almost bolt-on, and the list of modifications is known for a long time. Seats usually have resource within 120 to 200,000 on wear of the left cushion of a driver's seat, the texture on leather of seats, And a steering wheel quite well keeps up to 200, the central insert from Alcantara, and that longer, it is necessary only sometimes to clean it. But the outer part of the sidewall near the adjustment buttons can crack even at relatively low mileage, about 150,000, because the material there is inexpensive leatherette, which cannot withstand the load and bending. The troubles with the climate system are quite specific. There are not so many global failures, mostly people complain about howling of the heater fan, extraneous sounds during operation of the flaps, moisture in the heater unit, clogged drainage. Less often that the right side heats badly because of clogged heater radiator in winter. Even less complaints about the failure of air conditioner. It is here with variable volumetric capacity, it has no clutch, but there is a valve and it fails rather predictably, about 250,000, requiring replacement due to wear of its piston group. Well, or immediately after it was left empty and rolled a little, a small stroke of the pistons in such a design is always there. And without lubrication they are quickly scuffed. We have already written in detail about such breakdowns in the large material about typical problems of modern air conditioners returning to the dampers mentioned above. There are 6 to 7 dampers in the system, and a calibration error of a couple of them already causes a feeling of mouse fiddling. Most often, the problem manifests itself with a climate control unit with 3 rotating washers, as in cars before the restyling. The algorithms there are not very successful. Post-restyled and more so from B7 create problems with flaps on order less often require recalibrations, emit less unnecessary noise and movements. With them there are less often breakdowns of gear motors, and also they are less sensitive to wear of sensors of position of flaps. If you want, you can put a block from B7 on B6, but it is desirable to replace the block of comfort, VSM, otherwise the error on climate will be burning. The resource of motor drives itself is quite decent, more than 150,000 even with the first version of the block. On sale there are Chinese versions for 2,500 rubles, exactly corresponding to the original. There are separately potentiometer modules for them at 500 per piece. Replacing them, however, is considered quite difficult. Electrics. Owners usually say that the electronics in the car are reliable. This is indeed true. It does not suffer from minor failures, it is surprisingly fully diagnosed by the scanner, and the degree of integration of onboard systems is absolutely modern. If there is a good programmer and a good electrician, then with a high level of accuracy you can change almost any block and so it or change the settings. The other side of such functionality and richness of settings is rather high complexity of wiring, by the standards of cars with multiplex. Thus there are a lot of wires, and part of the wiring goes in corrugations inside the doors. All this inevitably gets damaged with age, and diagnostics of such a complex system is not an easy task even if you have a suitable scanner. And in addition, there is a whole layer of faults associated with unsuccessful modernizations, installation of multimedia systems and alarm systems. For example, rapid discharge of batteries at idle when replacing the OEM multimedia system with a more advanced OEM one can easily be associated with a mismatch between the versions of the gateway block and the multimedia system. In general, these cars require an electrician who is well versed in the peculiarities of onboard systems of these particular cars. And, of course, a number of design features should be noted. The generators are quite reliable, but if the overrunning clutch starts to slip, it quickly discharges the battery. The ignition key module is very capricious, the keys are not always easily and simply prescribed. ELV module, steering column lock module with its micro switches, at mileage over 200 it is very bad, replacement cost is high, controllers are soldered more often. Power supply relay of the retractor relay on diesel cars requires regular replacement. When burned, it creates the full effect of a permanently dead battery. Another typical electrical failure is the failure of parking brake gearboxes. They are individual, and the main cause is cracked housing and corrosion. But there is good news, now available are not bad Chinese substitutes, almost without any side effects. In general, the most criticism of onboard electronics is related to broken wiring inside the cores, complex cases of incompatibility, or overlapping problems, or attempts at unskilled repair. At first glance, the situation with B6 does not look so terrible. Perhaps, with all the complexity of the body structure and electrical system, the really problematic ones can be considered to be The copies after an accident. It is simply unprofitable to restore this car to the original after a serious impact. In almost 100% of cases it will be assembled from a cocktail of Chinese and second-hand parts, which are not the fact that they got up without problems. Otherwise, if the owner at least a little followed the paintwork and was not carried away by corrosion, the car has all chances to be alive. But before we draw up our final conclusions, we're gonna examine the chassis, the transmission and the engines. In conclusion, the Volkswagen Passat B6 presents a unique set of challenges for potential owners, particularly concerning the hidden dangers that can lurk beneath its paint and the overwhelming complexity of its wiring. Understanding these issues is crucial for anyone considering this model, as they can lead to costly repairs and safety concerns down the line. By staying informed and vigilant, you can make a more educated decision about whether the Passat B6 is the right choice for you. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more insights on automotive topics.